What is up, guys? Well, we're back here after week 7 of college football, and week 7 definitely delivered just as we thought it would. So many one possession games, overtime games, and just the best of the best in college football. So let's go ahead and get right into it, starting with the game that didn't quite deliver, didn't quite excite as much, and that's the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma. And this was pretty easy to see coming. I told y'all in my preview video that this rivalry has delivered some instant classics, but that this year it would not be like that. And yeah, it wasn't. Texas was going to win this game no matter what. First off, Oklahoma is struggling with injuries, and it's struggling very, very prevalently with those injuries. Normally, I don't really allow this to be a real excuse. I will acknowledge it, but also it's just part of the game. So I'll acknowledge that it's part of the game as well. And not having depth is not really an excuse because it's just another weakness, just like anything else on a team. And I still do agree with that. But Oklahoma, their case is a little bit unusual. They lost all of their starting receivers a few weeks ago, and that does not normally happen. They had defensive players playing on offense because they had no other options. But that being said, even if Oklahoma was at full health, I still don't think they would have had a fighting chance in this game. Texas is just the better team all around. They have the best defense in the country, and you heard me right, the best defense in the country. And they have a top 10 offense. So you could tell me that they've had a weak schedule, and I probably would agree with you. I think that the teams that we thought maybe bigger, like Michigan, didn't quite pan out the way that we thought that they would. Or the way that I did think they would. I didn't think Michigan was going to be that great, so it didn't surprise me. But they're playing Georgia this weekend, so we're definitely going to see how good that team is. But Oklahoma, they were far from the level of team that was going to be able to challenge or expose Texas in any real way. So, like I said, this is probably the best version of Texas that we've seen in a long time, and probably one of the worst versions of Oklahoma we've seen in a long time. I said it would be a dominant win for the Longhorns, and that it definitely was. Now we're going to go ahead and get to the games that did deliver, starting out with Penn State at USC, an overtime victory for the Nittany Lions, and this was USC's game to lose. They were up 20-6 going into halftime. Miller Moss was able to get the ball out effectively and quickly. He was able to limit that dominant pressure that Penn State's able to bring, the dominant defensive line that they have. Wasn't really as much of a factor. USC won the turnover battle with only 1 to Penn State's 3, and Penn State looked like they had no answers at all. USC was scoring, and Penn State just wasn't. But then Tyler Warren just set school records, Big Ten records, tied the single game reception records for a tight end. He went crazy. He had himself an absolute monster game here in the second half, and he allowed Penn State to come back and win this game. But also a missed field goal in overtime also helped them win, and so did USC, tripling the amount of penalties that Penn State had, or tripling the amount of yardage, I should say, for penalties. USC got the kind of game they wanted here. They played the way that I thought they would need to win this game. And in the end, the score did line up with what I had predicted. But I still think that Penn State may be the most overrated team in the country. They did prove to me, however, that they do have the ability to pass the ball effectively, which is the area that I thought I needed to see more of. So maybe not quite as overrated as I thought. I still have questions about the ability of Drew Aller, but the guys he's throwing to, at least at tight end, definitely very capable. As for USC, they have obviously improved much more, improved a lot since last year, but they have plenty of vulnerabilities still, and that secondary has real issues. I mean, Tyler Warren was not even contested at all most of the time. He was just wide open every time, and it's not like the defense didn't know where the ball was going, or at least they should have known. So yeah, big win for Penn State to go to USC and get a win there. Florida at Tennessee is next, and to be honest, this game was not fun to watch from a college football fan perspective, but it was so fun to watch as a Georgia fan. Both of these teams looked extremely flawed. Florida lost the game as expected, but they didn't quite do it the way that I expected them to, specifically in the way that Florida's defense was able to contain Tennessee, especially on the ground. This was a defensive battle, and I knew to expect that from Tennessee's defense, but I had a lot less faith in Florida's, but they did come through here. What lost this game for Florida in the end, though, can almost entirely be put on the coaching staff. It was just completely baffling to me how many opportunities Florida had to take over this game, and they just squandered them. The amount of red zone trips that ended with nothing was just head-scratching. Play calling, decision-making, stupid penalties, just absolutely ridiculous. They had a jet sweep on a 4th and 1. 12 men on the field penalty, multiple players with the same number on. I mean, it's just the kind of penalties that are completely on the coach. And I don't know what to say here, because I do like Billy Napier. I thought he would be a really good coach when they hired him, but he's just not it. He's not the coach. They're gonna obviously fire him and get a new coach. Whether that will be Lane Kiffin, like people are suggesting, or not, we'll see, but that's for a later discussion. Anyways, back to this game. Graham Mertz also did go down in this game, and he never returned, and he actually is out for the season now, so that's a huge blow to Florida. They're going to have to put in their freshman, DJ Lagway, and he'll have to burn his, I think he's a red shirt. I think he has to burn his red shirt. I might be wrong on that, but I do think that Florida wins this game if Mertz stays in, despite all of the play calling and bad decision making by the coaching staff. As a team, Florida just looked better, but coaching made it just near impossible for them to win. As for Tennessee, is not a win to be proud of. I mean, a win's a win, obviously, in any game, but you got a terrible Florida team at home, and this is all you can muster up. Tennessee did not win this game. Florida just lost it. And Nico Iamaleava, he's falling well short of the expectations I set for him. That's my fault. I thought he'd be much better than this, but that offense with all those weapons, just basically nothing going on there offensively. They better be ready for next week. They play Alabama at home. And not that Alabama looks like a great team either, but if you can't score offensively against the defense as vulnerable as Florida, or at least how I expect Florida's defense to be that vulnerable, good luck keeping up with Alabama's offense, because Alabama will definitely be able to score, I think, despite Tennessee's defense being so good. So we'll have to wait and see. But speaking of the devil, it's time to present the ref special of the week. That's South Carolina at Alabama. And what I'm not going to do here is blame the refs for South Carolina losing the game. South Carolina did that all on their own. South Carolina had opportunity after opportunity to win this game, but they literally fumbled the win. They intercepted the ball in the end zone just to give it right back to Alabama the next play, which resulted in a touchdown. They recovered an onside kick with a minute on the clock and couldn't even get 10 to 20 yards to get into field goal range. They had several dropped interceptions. They missed a field goal. Granted, it was a really far field goal. They missed a 2-point conversion that was just wide open. Lenora Sellers fumbled the ball when trying to get the ball out instead of just taking the sack. And the list just goes on and on and on. And South Carolina lost this game all on their own. But what the refs did do is aid Alabama in this game. The touchdown drive after South Carolina gave the ball back, some of the worst holding I have ever seen. And it was like the blatant kind too, like the arm across the body, hugging defenders and picking them up type of holding. The one that you would definitely expect to be called. Maybe Alabama would have scored the touchdown anyways, but we'll never know. It could have been even worse if the officiating wasn't oftentimes covered by good South Carolina defense. There were just several terrible calls that ended up not really mattering because South Carolina was able to get the ball back anyways without letting Alabama score, but still cost time, which South Carolina really needed in the end. Either way, the fact that Alabama was so close to losing this game at home after losing to Vanderbilt just further proves to me that they aren't what Alabama has been in the past. Their defense is incredibly vulnerable, and their offense is prone to big mistakes. As for South Carolina, those edge rushers continue to look incredible. Rocket Sanders is a great running back. Lenora Sellers is also dangerous on the ground, but they don't have the receivers to break off big plays, and they have an atrocious offensive line. And Lenora Sellers just lacks the pocket awareness to avoid sacks. So at the end of the day, Alabama escaped with the win, and South Carolina is left devastated once again. Next is Ohio State at Oregon, probably the game of the week, which is quite the accomplishment in a week as loaded as this one. Not only because my least favorite team of all time lost, but also because it was just jam-packed with everything you could want in a game, just craziness. You would have thought this was a premier rivalry, and it very well may be going forward because this game was heated. This game had a ton of lead changes, a weird kicking turnover, a player getting ejected for spitting on another player, and a thrilling ending, and just on and on. I was wrong about this one. And I'm really happy to be wrong about it because Ohio State did not prove that they are the best team in the country like I thought they would. Instead, they got owned at the line of scrimmage, and they had poor clock management at the end of the game, and they gave up on the run game in the second half, which I think was to their detriment. Oregon's problems with the offensive line looked to have been fixed to me. They gave up no sacks and only 2 tackles for losses. Dillon Gabriel played a phenomenal game, and this Ohio State defense is one of the best in the country, but Oregon scored anyways. The second half felt like every single drive, every team was scoring. So this game was just a ton of fun, and the outcome was even better for me. Turns out Oregon is just as good, if not better, than we thought, and Ryan Day once again has to answer why he cannot win the big games. And next we have Ole Miss at LSU, and it's just crazy to me that LSU came out with a win here because they looked like the inferior team the whole time, and they kind of were. But they kept getting these tiny opportunities to get back into this game, and Garrett Nussmeier looked far from great in this game. But when it mattered on the last drive and in overtime, he came through. LSU never led in this game until they won, which was just crazy. Until the touchdown in overtime, they had not led for a single second in this game. This environment was as advertised, at least it seemed to be so, over the screen, and I'm absolutely positive that had a ton to do with their win here. That Ole Miss defense was supposedly the best at causing sacks. Not in this game. I told y'all before their game against South Carolina that those defensive stats may be inflated due to the quality of competition they had played. Well, this game would certainly support that claim. The main problem for Ole Miss did not look to be defense, though. It was the offense. I really thought that Ole Miss would be better this year on offense, but they just aren't. And it was kind of sad seeing them lose this game after the kicker made a 57-yarder in overtime. But good for LSU. I mean, I did not predict LSU to win here, but I did say that this game was the most likely out of all of the big games to end in an upset, and it was. It was the game that led to an upset. So congrats, LSU. Still a ton of vulnerabilities there, but Ole Miss has a lot to answer for too. They're probably out of the playoff race at this point, which is really sad, but it is what it is. And LSU is actually still in it, even though a lot of people probably have counted them out at this point. Next is Vanderbilt at Kentucky. And Vanderbilt has done it again. They proved that their win against Alabama was not a fluke. They went to Kentucky and just won straight up. They didn't get as many yards as Kentucky, but they played a cleaner game with less turnovers, less penalties, and they controlled the time of possession. This was a really impressive win for me because Kentucky's defense is no joke. This was an away game for Vanderbilt coming off of a very, very, very emotional win against Alabama, and Kentucky was coming off of a bye. So what does that mean? Vanderbilt was just the better team. They overcame the situational disadvantages and went out there and took it to Kentucky. And as for Kentucky, that offense is just pitiful. They have really been depending on that defense to keep them in games, but at some point to succeed, you just need to have some kind of offensive production. Next, I have Iowa State at West Virginia, and Iowa State remains undefeated after taking out the Mountaineers in Morgantown, just as I expected. Rocco Becht predictably had an amazing game. Iowa State's defense continues to be a huge strength for this team. West Virginia is not really a bad team either. It's a big win for Iowa State. Many had predicted them to lose this game, but not I. I trusted, and they very well could be in the Big 12 championship picture, but they have plenty of tests ahead of them, so I'm not going to get too far ahead. As for West Virginia, I think that they are a trap team this season, good enough to be competitive in every game that they play, and good enough to maybe win some games they probably shouldn't, but not consistently good enough to have any meaningful success this year. And last but not least, I have Kansas State at Colorado. And Kansas State won like I had predicted, but it was not pretty. Colorado showed a real fight in this game, and they were clearly much better than they were last year. The star players absolutely popped off in this game. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, you know the drill. But the deciding factor for this game is exactly where I had expected it to be and where I said it would be, the line of scrimmage, as it is with most teams who play Colorado, but not like this. Colorado had negative 29 rushing yards in this game. Negative 29. They were absolutely one-dimensional in this game. And a big reason for that rushing total being in the negatives is that Kansas State was able to get 6 sacks on Shedeur Sanders, and Shedeur alone lost 50 yards on the ground in this game. But through the air, I mean, obviously Shedeur Sanders performed better than Avery Johnson, as expected, but the offensive line for Colorado just could not hold up. I told y'all the key to Kansas State winning this game would be if they could run the ball, and they also did that pretty decently, and they controlled time of possession. Despite all of that, though, it was a one-possession game that Colorado almost won, so props to them. It was very close despite all that was stacked against them. I think that they will win some unexpected games this year as well, and I'm pretty sure they're going to make a bowl game this year. And as for the games I made predictions for on social media, I'm not going to go over all those, but I am going to go over the highlights right here. So Pitt remains undefeated after taking down Cal. Arizona took down Utah. That means that the odds-on favorite to win the Big 12 lost to the team that was projected to be the worst in the Big 12. And that post-game interview was incredible. I definitely recommend you go watch that. But also prayers up to Cam Rising. He cannot go a single game without getting injured, I swear. Iowa smoked Washington. I predicted them to win, but seeing Iowa score 40 points is just still really hard to wrap my brain around. And Rutgers, obviously not the team that we thought they were. They got handled by Wisconsin. And Louisville barely squeaked out a win against a Virginia team that's a lot better than I think we expected. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys have a great night or day whenever you're watching this. Please like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, peace.